Who are the SEC coaches entering the 2025 season on the hot seat? I got a list of some guys that better get it together.
You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Just a Sec podcast. I am your host, Dustin Smith. Today's topic, SEC football coaches entering next season on the hot seat. I got a list of 4 names. We're going to start in Fayetteville, Arkansas, with a guy that unfortunately is familiar to these discussions. 30-31 in 5 seasons at Arkansas is head coach Sam Pittman. He has an SEC record of 14-28. We will give him credit. He has won 3 bowl games. Let's take a look at Sam Pittman's record by season at Arkansas. He comes in 2020, a COVID year, and goes 3-7. So I don't think anybody's going to hold that against him. If you remember, the SEC only played conference games that year. So you played 10 SEC teams. They go 3-7. It's his first year coming into what was a very down program, a very bad situation. No one really holds it against him. Then 2021, Arkansas goes 9-4. 4-4 in the SEC, some very big wins in that season. Go on to win the Outback Bowl, finish ranked number 20 in the coaches poll, number 21 in the AP poll. And I think that those are kind of the reasonable expectations for Arkansas, right? Maybe if all the chips fall and all the stars align, then Arkansas can have that big run like they had back in the day with Darren McFadden. But a 9-4 season at Arkansas, when you consider everything that program was up against in the SEC, some of these bigger schools that they've had to compete against, that's a good season. And it's a damn good season coming off of 3-7. And Arkansas fans and administration felt like, hey, this thing's rolling. Then you come into 2022, you take a bit of a step back. You go 6-6 in the regular season, 3-5 in conference, but you still win the Liberty Bowl to get to a winning record. So you're not pleased with it. But if you look at it, you say, okay, 2 of the first 3 years, we finished with a winning record. All things considered, you think the program's in a pretty good place. Then 2023 rolls around, Arkansas goes 4-8, and it's really the 1-7 in the SEC that's going to get you here. There's not a school in the Southeastern Conference where if you go 1-7 in conference play, people are going to start, they're not going to start asking questions. That's exactly what happened. A very dysfunctional year for Arkansas. It looked bad, but Sam Pittman having those 2 winning seasons in a row, Arkansas felt like, okay, he's earned another right. He's earned another year. We don't have a home run candidate out there if we do fire him. And so we'll see how it goes. You bring in Taylor Green to be the quarterback. You bring in Bobby Petrino to be the OC. In mixed results, I think the story of Arkansas this year, and probably the story of Sam Pittman's tenure at Arkansas, unfortunately, is close losses that should have been wins. To me, the Oklahoma State game and the Missouri game stand out as losses this year that Arkansas had, that if they would have won those games and should have won those games, that the season would look different, right? You finish 6-6, you get the big win in the Liberty Bowl. But if they could have held on to that big lead versus Oklahoma State, if they could have held on and beat Missouri, 2 very winnable games where you just felt like Arkansas kind of dropped the ball there, then you're looking at an 8, maybe a 9-win season. And I think you're feeling a little bit different. But when you've been at an SEC school for 5 seasons and you're a game under 500, you're 30-31, you're 14-28 in the SEC, people are going to start asking questions. And I think that's really where Arkansas was at. Is this the ceiling? Is this as far as this program can go with Sam Pittman? Things can fall apart and you can go 4-8. If everything goes right, you can go 9-4. You're probably going to finish somewhere around there every year, 6-6, 7-5. That kind of appears to be right now where the program is at. And then what are your expectations for your program? Do Arkansas fans and does the school and the administration, do you want to be that team where you're kind of winning 8 to 9 games every year and then maybe putting together once every 5, 6, 7 years, you're putting together a playoff run? Because we've seen, 10, we believe anyway, that 10 wins is going to get you in the SEC, and that 9 wins will have you close. So what are the expectations from Arkansas and their fans? But I think regardless, 5 seasons is a large sample size. And if your school is 30, if you were 30 and 31 at your school and 14 and 28 in the conference, people are going to ask questions. Are we just a 500 team? Is this just a 6-6 program under Sam Pittman? And I think it's a fair question to ask. So as we look forward to next year, there's a 3-game stretch in Arkansas schedule, a 3-game home stretch, where October 18th, you have Texas A&M at home. October 25th, you have Auburn at home. And November 1st, you have Mississippi State at home. I think right there, that 3-game home stretch in late October, early November is going to be very, very critical for Arkansas. I think they really need to go 2-1 in those games. Mississippi State, a very winnable game for Arkansas. And then you've got A&M and Auburn at home. Winnable games right there, especially Auburn, if you're Arkansas, who went into Auburn last year and handled their business. So that's an important stretch. Also, I'm looking at that game at Memphis on September 20th. Because the next week, it's sandwiched in between a visit to Ole Miss and Notre Dame coming into Fayetteville. That's a tough draw. You're playing the runner-ups, the national runner-ups. Notre Dame just played in the national championship game, lost to Ohio State. But they'll be coming into Fayetteville. You would imagine it's going to be a hyped-up crowd and everything that comes with that. But that's a tough draw for Arkansas. I don't like Arkansas scheduling that game, to be honest, when they already face this SEC gauntlet. So when you look at it, they play Alabama A&M, should be a win. Arkansas State should be a win. You're 2-0. Then you go to Ole Miss and to Memphis. If Arkansas loses both of those, if they lose to Ole Miss, they'll be frustrated, rightfully so. But then when you go to Memphis, if you lose that one and you're 2-2 with Notre Dame coming in there, and you could possibly get off to 2-3, then you've got Tennessee where you got to go on the road to Knoxville. That Memphis game, very, very important to me. You start off 2-0. So let's say you lose to Ole Miss, you beat Memphis, you're sitting there at 3-3. Even if you lose to Notre Dame, you could be 3-4. Maybe though, if you're 3-3, you can put up a fight. Tennessee, you can split those games, maybe try to go to 4-4. But even if you lose all those, you're sitting at 3-5. Then you've got 3 games at home. A&M, Auburn. Let's say that you split those. Let's say you win 2 out of 3 out of those. You're kind of right back in the mix. You finish up with LSU, at Texas, and at Missouri. So it's not easy. It's not easy in the SEC. And I'm looking at it, and the more I look at the schedule, I think Sam Pittman's going to be in trouble. We'll see what they can do. Let's see. It was another year with Taylor Green in that system. Let's see that first stretch there, man. That Ole Miss. If they can find a way to beat Ole Miss and beat Memphis and be 4-0, then I can see Arkansas getting to 7, maybe 8 wins. And that's my question to the Arkansas fans, and I want y'all to put it in the comments. What's the number? I'm going to ask this for all the coaches that I do here. What's the number, Arkansas fans? If you go 7-5, do you fire Sam Pittman? I don't think you would do it with 8-4. I really don't think Arkansas would do that. Maybe he would go, 8-4, win the bowl game and retire. That would be, I think that'd be great. But then it's who do you have lined up? Are you going to go back to Petrino? A lot of questions right there. So Sam Pittman on the hot seat. I can definitely see the path where there's a rough start for the Razorbacks and Sam Pittman doesn't make it through. So we'll see how it all plays out. I like Sam Pittman. I'm pulling for him. I hope he's able to get it done and coach at Arkansas as long as he wants to. All right, number 2 on our list, Billy Napier, 19-19, 3 seasons at Florida, 10-14 in the SEC, and 3-9 versus the rivals. And for Florida, I have your rivals as Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, and Florida State. Florida fans, don't get mad at me. I know y'all beefing with everybody out there. You got lots of rivals. Those are the ones that I consider. If there's other ones that I missed, I know y'all played UCF this year and beat them at home. If y'all consider that a rivalry or whatever, then my apologies. But 1-2 versus Tennessee, 1-2 versus LSU, 0-3 versus Georgia, and 1-2 versus Florida State. Did beat the hapless, the god-awful Florida State Seminoles this year. But Florida fans don't give a damn about that, right? You don't care if they suck or not. It's still a win over the rival. So this is a really interesting one because if we look at Billy Napier in his first 3 seasons at Florida, he goes 6-7 year one, loses the Las Vegas Bowl. The next year goes 5-7. So we're going to talk about this with another SEC coach in a minute that is going into his 3rd season. When you start out your first 2 seasons at any SEC program, probably even Vanderbilt, if you start out with 2 losing seasons, you're entering year 3 on the hot seat, period. That's the Southeastern Conference. The expectations are too high at a majority of these schools. Florida's one of them. You can't go 6-7, 5-7, 3-5 back-to-back years in the SEC to open up your tenure at a school in the Southeastern Conference and not be on the hot seat. And that's exactly where Billy Napier found himself this year. And then it got off to somewhat of a rough start for the 2024 version of the Florida Gators. You get thumped by, and I guess I should have put Miami in here. So you could add to that. I don't even have Miami on my list of Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, and Florida State, but he's at least 3-10 versus rivals because I know Florida fans are going to consider Miami a rivalry there. So he loses to Miami out the gate this year, and then you beat Stanford. You get thumped 33-20 versus Texas A&M, and it didn't even feel that close. And you're 1-2. Then you beat Mississippi State. You're 2-2. And that's when, there was just a lot of questions. There was a lot of questions. You were hearing rumors of the administration meeting and having his buyout prepared, that they were ready to go if need be. And seemed to be some kind of back and forth between the administration and the AD. And it's kind of what the next move was going to be. But regardless, he was in peril. He was in trouble. He was coaching on a week-to-week basis. Goes up to Mississippi State, gets a big win, comes back home, plays UCF, gets a big win. So then all of a sudden, you're sitting there at 3-2, you have a winning record. You go to Tennessee and lose a heartbreaker in overtime. And you fall back to 3-3. Man, what this season may have been for Florida if they had pulled that one out. But they don't. So you're sitting at 3-3, and the questions remain. Like, is this the guy? What are we going to do here? You get a win over Kentucky, 48-20. Then you lose at Georgia, but we're pretty competitive. Well, in Jacksonville, but lose to Georgia. You're competitive in a 34-20 loss. Really got thumped versus Texas. And at that point, you're sitting at, 3-5, 4-5. You're sitting there at 4-5. Tons of questions. Is this really the guy? All that stuff. And then you come out and you beat LSU 27-16 at home. Massive win in a rivalry game. LSU was ranked 22nd at the time. Then you beat number 9 Ole Miss the next week at home, 24-17. Ruined their playoff chances. And it's a win over a top 10 team. Maybe the biggest win of Billy Napier's career at Florida anyway. Then you go to rival Florida State and you win 31-11. And then in the Gasparilla Bowl and Raymond James Stadium, defeat Tulane 33-8. So winning the final 4 games of the season when you were 4-5 and you finish off 8-5 after the first winning season of your tenure. And really, DJ Lagway is the story here. DJ Lagway and the way that Florida finished the 2025 recruiting cycle. There, when all the noise was going on, when all the discussions about Billy Napier was happening, the athletic department, the athletic director came out and gave the vote of confidence, right? They gave the vote of confidence. They said, we're behind Billy no matter what. At the same time, starting quarterback gets hurt. True freshman DJ Lagway comes in and shows that he has the ceiling of a first overall type pick, NFL draft pick at that quarterback. He's got all the tools. So then you see, oh boy, we got this young quarterback. You win your last 4 games, and Billy, once that vote of confidence comes out, it appeared like the buyout money and still became NIL recruiting money. And Billy finished. He crushed it on the trail. Absolutely crushed it on the trail, finishing with a big time class and really giving Florida fans a lot of hope. I mean, they had some big flips because the class was floundering. There at one point, the class was outside the top 25, didn't have a whole lot of commitments. They get that commitment from the athletic department. They get that public vote of confidence on top of the recruits seeing, okay, the administration has said they're behind this guy. Then they see the young freshman quarterback, and it's like, oh, I can go play with that guy for a few years. Oh, they got a guy. They got a dog at quarterback. It's up. And they finish off winning 4 games in a row. And all 4 of those games, whether it be a bowl game or rivals or the Ole Miss game being a top 10 game, those are all big games. And the kind of games that from a fan's perspective that you want to win and are fun to get the dub in. So Billy Napier finished strong. I didn't think he was even going to be the head coach at Florida after that Texas A&M game. I didn't think he was even going to be the head coach of Florida going into 2026. But what's got him on the hot seat is they all but did it. Like it all but happened, right? The Florida opened the door and they just didn't walk through the actual door firing him. But Billy's been all the way to the edge already. And a guy that's been all the way to the edge, you can find yourself back there. A couple of losses, and you can find yourself right back there. Next year, Florida starts the season off with Long Island University. Then South Florida, you should be 2-0. But then you're going to Baton Rouge and to Miami in weeks 3 and 4. You lose those games and you're 2-2. And then you got a bye week, and then Texas comes in there. There's a path. LSU and Miami are super important games for Billy Napier. I think, man, if you lose that LSU game, but you can go in there and beat Miami, you'll be okay. But then you got Texas coming in there. Then you go on the road to A&M. That's a tough stretch. A fast start for Billy Napier will be huge next year. If he comes out there 4-0 and then drops one to Texas and they're at 4-1 or whatever, okay. But if you start off 2-2, you lose 2 LSU and 2 Miami, man. And even if you lose to one of those, but then you lose to Texas, you'll be sitting at 3-2, having to go to A&M, at 3-2. Let's say that happens, and then they lose that game, and they're 3-3. The questions come right back up. So although Billy did a great job at getting himself off the ledge, he ain't off the mountain. And nobody is. No SEC football coach, maybe outside of Kirby Smart, is too far from that ledge. A couple of losses in this league, and boy, there you go. But when you're entering your 4th season at a university, and you're 19-19, and you're 10-14, and 3-10 versus rivals, you better win. And all that money, all that NIL money, the emergence of DJ Lagway, the recruiting class that was put together, expectations will be high in Gainesville. And Billy Napier is going to have to get it done. And for that reason, I've got him on the hot seat. It may not be scorching hot this very moment because he ended everything with the 4 wins in a row and a nice class and all that. Everyone can be excited for the future in Gainesville. Let it start slow. Let him start 3-2, 3-3. Let that happen. And Billy will be right back there. The same people that met about his job and his future, they'll meet about it again. When you're going into year 4 at the University of Florida and you're 19-19 and you have a losing record versus your rivals and in the SEC, you're on the hot seat, buddy. And I'm pulling for Billy Napier. I hope he's able to pull it off. That was going to be a fun one to watch. And I think he's got a guy at quarterback. You got a guy in DJ Lagway. So there's no more excuses there for Billy Napier to not get his program up to 8-9 wins. And they won 8 games this year. So, but I'm saying 8-4 in the regular season, 9-3 type thing. And I think everyone will still feel good about what's going on there in Gainesville. It's going to be interesting. That's going to be a fun one to watch down there in Central Florida this year. Next on our list, Mr. Hugh Freeze, 11-14 in his 2 seasons at Auburn, 0-4 versus the rivals of Alabama and Georgia. Back-to-back losing seasons and some really disappointing losses on there. New Mexico State blew Auburn out in Hugh Freeze's first year at a night game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. That's never going to sit well with the Auburn fans. It shouldn't. Very embarrassing. Auburn's still getting trolled for that one. I know it was Diego Pavia and all that kind of stuff, but Auburn just got their doors blown off that night. I was at that game. Auburn acted like they never wanted to be there. They got pushed around on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage by the New Mexico State Aggies. That's a bad loss for Hugh Freeze. Everyone likes to say, well, Nick Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe his first year. It's easy to forget about that afterwards, right? But what do you do the next year? Comes out the next year, goes 5-7, losses to Vanderbilt at home by double digits in a game that Auburn had no business losing in. And that's really been the story on the field. We'll talk about what Hugh's done right off the field. But Hugh Freeze is entering his third season at Auburn on the hot seat. A lot of what we talked about with Billy Napier. Your first 2 seasons at any SEC program, you have losing years. People are going to be asking questions. And you're going to be on the hot seat. There needs to be progress. People want to see the program moving forward. No one wants. Auburn's had 4 losing seasons in a row. So Hugh Freeze took over a mess. That was understood. 6-7 the first year. Some disappointing losses for sure. You had Alabama on 4th and goal from the 31-yard line, and you give up a Hail Mary at the very end of the game. That's tough. You were up on Georgia in the 4th quarter at home. Had a tip pass, a wobbly ball, hit a linebacker in the gut. He doesn't secure the play. It would have been an interception that probably would have ended the game for Auburn. Ole Miss is another game, his first year that you look at and you say, boy, Auburn should have won. But this year that's really the story for Auburn this year. Cal, Auburn loses to Cal by a touchdown. Auburn commits 5 turnovers. Abysmal. 2 weeks later versus Arkansas, Auburn loses to Arkansas in a game that Auburn clearly could have won. 5 turnovers. Threw 3 interceptions in the first half. Running backs fumbling the football all over the place. Penalties at the worst time. Couldn't get off the field on 3rd and long. Just a game that Auburn just gave away. Oklahoma at home. Auburn up double digits in the second half. Can't close the deal. The pick 6 that gave Oklahoma the lead late in the 4th quarter, you're running it down Oklahoma's throat with Jarquez Hunter. You decide to throw it with Peyton Thorne. He makes a bad read, pick 6. You drop the game to Oklahoma at home. Missouri. Brady Cook gets hurt early. Missouri's backups playing the entire game. Auburn defense doesn't give up anything to the backup. Auburn offense can't get anything going. Eventually, Brady Cook comes in the 4th quarter, wins the football game. That game Auburn had no business losing again. Just too many close losses. Even the Iron Bowl. Alabama committed 4 turnovers. You're driving the ball late in the game. It's a 1-possession game. You're trying to get back into it. And you have Jarquez Hunter have him throw a pass on a halfback pass across the field. Hash mark to the opposite side of the field. It leads in a pick. Bama goes down, gets points. That's the football game. That's the football game. Going back to that Iron Bowl game, there was a situation where way before the Hail Mary, Auburn had the wrong number 0. It was supposed to be Keontae Scott. Instead, it was Coy Moore, who had not been fielding punts. He goes back to field the punt. He muffs it, gives Alabama new life. Auburn could have caught the ball, ran some clock, leading the ball game at that point. If they would have went down and got a touchdown, probably would have been the nail in the coffin. That's just a story of so many Auburn games. And then Hugh Freeze sits in the post-game pressers, and he basically says that it's his fault. If you go back to the Vanderbilt game, he called a timeout with 2 minutes and 2 seconds to go in the game. And when asked about it in the postgame, why he didn't just wait for the 2-minute warning and then take his timeout after the 2-minute warning, he said that he had forgotten that the 2-minute warning had been implemented in college football. So there's just a lot of those mistakes that look Bush League. There's this whole other conversation you can have about Peyton Thorne. Auburn brings in Peyton Thorne, Hugh Freeze's first year, does this 2 QB system with Robbie Ashford for a long time, goes away from that, ends the year with Peyton Thorne, kind of blames the receivers, and Philip Montgomery, who was the offensive coordinator in year 1, says, hey, I got to get my guys. So he goes and gets Derek Nix from Ole Miss, who he had previously coached with, to be the offensive coordinator. Doubles down on Peyton Thorne, said, I just got to get Peyton Thorne weapons. Goes and gets Keandre Lambert-Smith, goes and gets Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, some of these guys. Says, I'm just going to give him weapons. Still the same result. Peyton Thorne actually played a lot better, had a lot more production than he did his first year. But it still seemed like this Auburn team was disorganized on the offensive end. And that's what I'll finish with Hugh Freeze. Auburn fans are tired of having offensive head coaches that are being carried by good defense. First-year defensive coordinator Ron Roberts, who is now at Florida, I think he may have actually left Florida, but he left Auburn to go to Florida. He did a fantastic job in his first year. And Auburn was in a lot of games because of Ron Roberts' defense. Same thing this year with DJ Durkin. DJ Durkin played the youngest defense in the SEC, freshmen and sophomores all over the field, and still had the top 5 unit in the conference, a top 25 unit in the nation. So people are looking at Hugh Freeze and saying, hold on, you're the offensive guy. Why are we only even in games because the defense and your offense is so abysmal? A game like Vanderbilt, Auburn loses 17-7. Like 20 would have won you that game at home, and you can't get to 20. It's wild. It's just wild to watch. And you see all these young guys on the defensive end with DJ Durkin, and in the year before that, Ron Roberts. The year with Ron Roberts, it wasn't as young as it was this year with DJ. But you see DJ with these young guys being able to put them in position and everything looking organized. And then you see Hugh over on the offensive end, and it's quite the opposite. So the saving grace for Hugh Freeze is recruiting. Auburn was the only team in the top 20 of the national recruiting rankings in the 2025 cycle that had a losing record. On top of that, you went out and got Jackson Arnold in the portal. You went out and got a big-time receiver from Georgia Tech and Eric Singleton, a starting left tackle from Virginia Tech, and a starting left tackle from USC. So you went and got 2 starting tackles from Power 4 programs you think can shore up and solidify that offensive line. Went and got Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma, who was disappointing in his year last year at Oklahoma as a starter. But the same way that you brought in Peyton Thorne and are going to be responsible for that, Hugh Freeze will be responsible for Jackson Arnold. And he believes in Jackson Arnold. They've paid the NIL money to get Jackson Arnold to Auburn, and they've assembled the team around him. So this is the guy that you went out and got, right? Just like you went out and got the last guy. What'll be interesting for Hugh Freeze is I think there's a real world where Jackson Arnold struggles, but true freshman Deuce Knight, 5-star out of Mississippi, could come in and do something similar to what DJ Lagway did. I'm not saying they're the same player. DJ Lagway is a stud. It's very rare that young freshmen like that at the quarterback position are ready to go. But Deuce is a guy. Deuce really is a guy. So I'm interested to see if Auburn went 7-5, but Deuce Knight played the last 4 or 5, maybe 6 games, and he showed a lot of promise. And that's the number. That's the real question here. What is the number for Hugh Freeze? 6-7 the first year, 5-7 the second year. I think that 7-5, there's a discussion. What do those 5 losses look like? It would really be the question. I could see Hugh Freeze going 7-5 and getting fired. I could. Auburn, due to the ridiculous structure of Gus Malzahn and Brian Harson's contract, Auburn's contract for Hugh Freeze is very, very reasonable. The buyout money, which isn't even a lot, can be spaced out over a large amount of time, and especially after the year 3, after the Iron Bowl of year 3, like Auburn would be fine. The buyout would literally be a non-factor the way they structured this contract. So with the way Hugh Freeze is recruited and the way he's portaled in this particular portal cycle, there's not going to be any more excuses. When you look at Auburn's schedule next year, open up at Baylor. Auburn fans feel like that should be a win. It's a tough one to open your season up for, but a loss right there, Auburn's not going to be happy with. Then you have Ball State at home, South Alabama at home. Then you go to Oklahoma and to Texas A&M. So for me, that Baylor game is of massive importance because you're going to beat Ball State, you're going to beat South Alabama. You should. I mean, you feel like you should have beat New Mexico State. That Baylor game is huge, man. It's massive. You get that win, then you beat Ball State and South Alabama. Then you're 3-0 going into Oklahoma. Then you go to Kyle Field the next week. So if you get that Baylor win, then say you just split with Oklahoma and Texas A&M, well, then you're looking solid, right? Then you're looking solid. You'd be looking at 4-1 right there. And that, any Auburn fan would take that. Then you have a bye week. You got Georgia coming at home. That'd be, let's just pencil in a loss right there. Say you lose, you'd be 4-2. Then you have Missouri coming at home. Auburn very much could win that game. Then you go to Arkansas. Auburn very much win that game. Then you got Kentucky at home. Then you got Vanderbilt at home. Yeah, looking at the schedule, and now I think 7-5 might get Hugh Freeze fired. Hugh Freeze needs to go 8-4, and all the tools are there. There's no more excuses. There's no more offensive coordinators to blame. Hugh Freeze is basically the OC, the guy that is the OC by title you went and got. There's no more Peyton Thorne to blame, even though that's the guy you went and got. You know how fans are. They want to blame the quarterback. Well, this is the second one, right? This is the second one. And if that doesn't work, then you're going to have to pivot to Deuce Knight. And you better hope that works. So Hugh Freeze shouldn't be in this position. That's the really frustrating part about this for Auburn, is that Hugh Freeze should not be in this position. There are several games that he's let go in his first 2 years. If you just win that Iron Bowl, let's just say he wins that Iron Bowl, and then you still lose the Music City Bowl, and you're 7-6, but it's a winning season, and you're going to get you would definitely have got the bump, right? You would get the grace. You would get the fans, you would get the love from the fans for beating your arch rival, especially when they were good. And you're one play away from making that happen, and made several colossal mistakes that even led to that one play being a thing. Oklahoma and Cal. Auburn goes 7-5 this year. If they just beat Oklahoma and Cal, 2 games they just gave away, them away. And we could go to Missouri, and like we already did, we could go down the list of games Auburn gave away this year. I think the hope for Auburn is that late win in overtime versus Texas A&M, the last home game of the season, where kind of solidified Deuce Knight's recruitment, kind of locked in a lot of guys in what ended up being the 6th overall class in the 2025 cycle. I think Auburn's hope is that win is going to propel Auburn forward into the future. So all the talent's there for Hugh Freeze. The talent's there. He's got continuity of staff. He's got all the guys that he wants back. I think he's got one of the best DCs in the country. And I think Auburn's defense next year, because all those guys, Jalen Crawford, DeMarcus Reddick, Malik Blockton, all those young guys on top of a veteran, Keldrick Falk, and some other guys like that, that defense is going to be loaded up. It's going to be loaded up. And they've got even more guys coming in that I think are going to play as true freshmen, like Eric Winters, Anquan Fagans. It's loaded up. There's talent over there on the defense. So you got to quit turning the ball over on offense. Stop committing penalties. Quit looking unorganized. Stop shooting yourself in the foot on the offensive side of the ball. That's what Hugh Freeze needs to do. If not, 6-6, 7-5, anything less than that, I think it'll be 3 years and done at Auburn. And that would be very disappointing, because I'm pulling for Hugh Freeze on a personal level. I like a good comeback story, man. It's real easy for a burner account with 9 followers to troll Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze, 2 phones, blah, 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 blah. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, I get it. I get it. I get it. But I want to see Hugh Freeze succeed, not only just because I am an Auburn guy, but because, like, personally, I want to see his redemption story. I want to see his second chance at a big-time SEC job. This is his first ever job this big. And he's done a great job recruiting. He's done a great job assembling the staff. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that he's done that he's doing very well. I just think he's got to get more organized. And that's because if you watch his team, defense doesn't commit the same stupid penalties all the time the offense does. And I think that starts in practice, right? So I think there's some things that Auburn's got to clean up: turnovers, penalties, get a little bit more organized with your personnel, the way you assemble and distribute that personnel. And I could see a path with that schedule right there where Hugh Freeze gets to 8-4, 9-3. If everything goes right, maybe better than that, and he's off and running. With that schedule right there, nobody will tolerate any of this any more 6-6. Definitely not 5-7 like this year, right? Hugh Freeze has to have a winning season, and I think it's got to be a winning season by at least 2 games, probably 3 games over that 500 mark next year, or he will not be coaching at Auburn in 2026. Last one of the day, and I'm going to make this one quick, but it's Mr. Brent Venables at Oklahoma. 22-17 overall through 3 seasons in Norman. 1-2 versus Texas. 0-3 in bowl games. And 2 losing seasons. 2 losing seasons. And the thing with that is that before Brent Venables, Oklahoma had not had a losing season since 1998. So you go from not having a losing season since 1998 to having a losing record 2 out of the last 3 years. Now, buddy, you're on the hot seat. First year lost to Texas 49-0. Second year with a big win over Texas 34-30. And then last year getting blown out again 34-3. So 2 of your 3 games versus your biggest rival, you've got the doors blown off of you 49-0 and 34-3. And I just wonder, because I don't see his name coming up a whole lot in these discussions, but to me, he's definitely earned it. His first year, and his first 2 years, Oklahoma's in the Big 12. First year, 6-7, 3-6 in the Big 12, lose the Cheez-It Bowl. Next year, 2023, you go 10-3, finish tied for second in the Big 12, lose the Alamo Bowl, did finish the season 10-3, so full credit for the 10-win season, and then 15th in the coaches poll, 15th in the AP poll, and then 6-6 this year, and a ridiculous loss to Navy in the Armed Forces Bowl, just about as bad as it can be. And although it's the Big 12 and the SEC combined, his record in conference is 12-14 as Oklahoma's head coach. So if Brent's going to have to answer this question of, are you just a coordinator or can you be a head coach? 23rd head coach in the history of Oklahoma, replacing Lincoln Riley. And I just don't think there was any excuse for the way this year went. Now, I know the injury bug, and I hear all that. The injury bug, and, they fired the offensive coordinator, and Jackson Arnold wasn't very good, and all that stuff. But, man, if Auburn doesn't give Oklahoma a game, and I know that, the what-if game is whatever, but Oklahoma was just even closer here to having a worse season than what they had. I'm not blown away by anything that Oklahoma's doing. I'm not blown away by their recruits. They're not doing a bad job recruiting, but they're not doing anything on the trail that I'm looking at that's really making noise to me, the way that Billy Napier finished up, right, in his 3rd season. As we stand, like, I'd pick Billy over Brent as far as who I have more faith in right now, I think. There's just a lot of questions. There's just a lot of questions at Oklahoma, and I have not been impressed with the 3 years that Brent Venables has been the head coach. And, I mean, obviously, the 10-3 season, that's a good year and everything like that. But it's in the Big 12, man. And then when you look at Texas and the late push that Texas has made in the playoffs this year, making the playoffs last year, it's just part of it. It's part of it. When your biggest rival and one of the biggest rivalries, top 5 rivalry in college football, when they're hot, when their program's taking off the way they have under Steve Sarkisian, that Oklahoma fan base and administration's got to be looking around, asking the question: is Brent Venables the guy? Is Brent Venables the guy that can compete with Steve Sarkisian? And it's a fair question. It's a fair question, and I'm not blown away by anything that they've done. They've got nice pieces in the portal, and they've got some nice pieces on the in the 2025 cycle, but it just hasn't I'm just not sure about the future. I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold on it at all. According to 247 Sports, Oklahoma is ranked 17th in the 2025 recruiting rankings that were updated as of February 2nd, 2025. When you look at the teams that they're going to be competing against, Texas, arch rival, just talked about it, number 1. Georgia, number 2. Alabama, number 4. Auburn, number 6. Florida, number 8. A&M, number 9. LSU, number 10. Tennessee, number 11. Ole Miss, number 16. Oklahoma at 17. You're behind a lot of teams. And let me ask the question here. Auburn goes 5-7 this year. Oklahoma beats Auburn. Okay? Oklahoma beats Auburn in Auburn. Auburn finishes 6th in recruiting, and Oklahoma finishes 17th. I'm questioning the on-the-field production. You should never have 2 losing seasons out of 3 at Oklahoma. And I'm questioning the recruiting prowess. Are you the guy? Are you the guy to go into these houses in the Deep South and pull the talent you need to pull? Can you compete with the Kirby Smarts, the Steve Sarkisians, the Hugh Freezes on the recruiting trail? See, that's the thing about Billy Napier or about Hugh Freeze, 2 guys that are on this list. I think they can recruit. They put themselves in a position on the field to where they're on the hot seat. With Brent, I don't see the on the field. I don't see the off the field. It's tough. It's tough. Take a look at Oklahoma's schedule real quick. You got Illinois State at home to lead the season off. Michigan at home, that's a big one. That's a big one. A win there would be massive. Then you've got Temple and Auburn. So you got to start 3-1 there. You can't lose to Michigan and to Auburn. But you got both those games at home. Then you got Kent State. Well, that's a pretty easy start. Then it's Texas and obviously a neutral site game at South Carolina, Ole Miss at home, at Tennessee, at Bama. That's a brutal stretch. Missouri at home and LSU. So that back half definitely gets real for Oklahoma. So if they don't beat Michigan, they don't beat Auburn, it could be trouble looking down the line. A lot of questions at Oklahoma. We'll see how Brent does. I'm not sold. He has definitely earned his spot, in my opinion, on the hot seat. I know some Oklahoma people that would argue that believe in him and all that kind of stuff. Let it go 6-6, 7-5. And then look at what that would mean for the totality of his 4-year resume. I think some hard questions will start being asked. I do. Man, thank you guys for watching. Please smash that thumbs up button. Sub to the channel if you have not, and share this out on social media. I'll catch y'all next time. I'm out.